wonder if there's beer on the sun. Hello? I know what that means. Time to talk about RoboFit.
Don't know what that is? Don't blame you. Either didn't sell well, or got into time, or a combination of both. Couldn't find sales figures. So what is RoboFit? It's a Sega Saturn and PlayStation 1 game released in 1996 that was developed by Ultron and outside of Japan was published by Kokopelli Digital Studios. Kokopelli only has 2 titles officially listed, RoboPit and In the Hunt. They were only active a year from 1995 to 1996 and were an internal publishing brand for THQ, which is now THQ Nordic after their bankruptcy. Ultron's game catalog seems to consist of mostly licensed games with a few original games sprinkled about, RoboPit being one of them. They still make games today, including Next Gen Solitaire, some kind of dictionary program, a pet simulator game that wouldn't translate to English when I hit the button. Oh, and one more game they have displayed on their website. Trumpy. The hell am I even looking at? Okay, let's just click this. Okay, so it's Trumpy. We own the world. Nice. I don't know if I have words. I don't know if words would do it justice. That's about the best I have. Let's just read the blurb here. Hi, I am Trumpy. Have you heard about me? I am the most famous and most powerful person on Earth. I can make people rich, very rich, instantly. And I can also make people very poor, instantly. I will make you a super rich billionaire, and we are going to own the world. Well, there's some kind of super smash. A billionaires club. And profit? Well, hot damn! I might need to check the App Store for this later. Getting back on track. What kind of game is RoboPit? Well, it's listed as a fighting game, but it's not your typical fighting game. You build your own robot with a set of bodies, legs, or tank treads or propellers, and arms, which are your weapons. You can change individual parts' colors, and they give you a decent selection for a start. I wish there were more that could be unlocked, but there's enough, I guess. The body and feet affect different stats like turn, jump, health, weight. Once you have your robot finished and named, you're ready to start fighting. There's 100 ranked robots to fight, and you start ranked at 101. You can only scroll so far up the contenders list. As you rank up, you can progress further up until you reach number 1. Though you might have to face them multiple times until you are rank 1. When you beat an opponent, you get their weapons and rank up a little depending on how far up in rank the opponent you fought was, as well as leveling up your weapon skill. When you lose, you rank down and lose your equipped weapons. The fights themselves take place in square arenas with various scenery objects and a couple of obstacles. They also have different daytime lighting settings, and you start in first person. A controls your left arm, B controls your right, C is jump, and the trigger's straight. The D-pad is set up similar to tank controls, where up moves you forward, back moves you back, and left and right turn your robot. Though it's much smoother than it sounds and feels natural. You can block with X or Y. I didn't know that until near the end of my playthrough. or that Z changes the camera. You can win by either knocking off all of your opponent's health, getting them to ring out, which mostly happened to me during the last fight of the game, or by having the most health at the end of the timer, which only happened to me on the PlayStation 1. You can also jump on your opponent to do a little bit of damage. The AI gets progressively harder, but it's unnoticeable until over halfway up the ranks. And the names of these robots is priceless. What a selection we got here. Names like Boom Frog, Doinker, Kamikaze, Edith, Put 'em Up, Painbot, Clyde, Yo Jimbo, Dum Dum, Bart, Earth Kill, Taxiderm, Trouble, Lancelot, Winky, Napoleon, and Gallagher. And also, I can't forget the Purple XD. I know it's perplexed, but I'll always read that as Purple XD now. What the hell is that name selection? Are those pop culture and video game references? Wait a minute. Winky? Clyde? Really? Bart? Yeah, that fits alongside well with Painbot and Earthkill. These names are honestly hilarious to me. Why are there historical figures? Why is one named Kamikaze? We'll never know. Now, 100 robots seems like a long arcade mode. However, since you can fight well above your rank, you can progress relatively quickly. I kinda took advantage of the save system to make the experience easier on myself. That's what it's there for, right? No, I definitely exploited it. In my defense, my old Saturn save battery was dead, and at the time, I didn't know how to change it. So I was unable to save any progress, and never got that far. So yes, now I took full advantage of it, and then some. With no saving, the game is a bit brutal, but using it excessively and cheaply makes it pretty easy peasy. There's actually a bit of strategy in who you choose to fight. Yes, the further up the rank you face, the faster you'll rank up, but there's other factors to consider, such as what loadout they're using, and if you'll stand a chance against their weapon set. Do they have one of the weapons you use? That way you can get backups to save if you lose one of yours later. Some weapons are quick, some are powerful, some have better distance, and the more powerful the gun, the less ammo it'll have. So better make those shots count. Fists can pick up objects as well as punch, and also come in different sizes with higher damage that are slower. Shields might improve or block or health, I couldn't tell. There's a bunch of other weapons as well that have advantages and disadvantages, such as the boomerang, slicer, big hand, and big lips! Okay, those last two sound weird, but they do serve a purpose. They bring the enemy to you.
Get over here!
Most of these weapons you have to unlock through victory. You only have so many options at first. This adds strategy as you go. You want to go all offensive? You want a ranged weapon? My personal robot has a small gun for the left arm, giving me a decent amount of shots as well as distance, and a comma for the right, giving me a good damage at a closer range. When using a melee weapon, the direction you press the D-pad will determine how you swing. Left and right swing your weapon from the sides, allowing you to swipe opponents at your side. Holding down will slash upwards, pushing them back, though it's noticeably slower. Forward will slash downwards, and just pressing the button will do a standard slash. Once out of ammo with a ranged weapon, it will switch to punching. Some weapons are ranged and have no ammo, but require you to wait for your weapon to return. As you take damage, a small bar will fill up beside your health bar. It's a special meter that you can unleash by hitting A and B simultaneously. There's a standard ramming move available to all robots that can be used by also holding forward that will launch you in the direction you're facing, and the others are determined by the arms you have equipped. There's not much of a story here. except for the intro sequence before the start menu. It's something I was pleasantly surprised to find at the end of my journey. I don't know about you, but that intro pumps me up into getting into some robot fights. Speaking about things from the game that get you pumped up, let's talk about that music. I love the music from this game. 3 tracks stand out in particular to me. Track 14, the robot making music. Track 13, the menu music. Track 3. The music has a little bit of everything you need. It's got some jazzy and relaxing tracks, as well as a good selection of tracks that get you psyched up and in the zone. I also love the use of ambient sound effects, such as the operator sound clip in track 14. Even though there's 100 robots worth of fighting to rank 1, it didn't take me long to get there. I had to grind a little bit to officially hit rank 1. Once I did, I found a little surprise. Now, scattered all throughout the robots on the list, there are bosses, robots whose position are fixed, and are all in shadow with no preview of their weapons, except for Take It, who on the Saturn is not in silhouette and also has a different body from the PlayStation 1 version. I beat all of them on my way up, though it's not required. After getting to number 1, you return to the ladder to fight. You'll find a new silhouetted robot named Zenith at rank 0. There are no stakes, as your rank and weapon skills don't change, as well as not losing your weapons. This was nice to figure out, saving myself time from reloading pointlessly. This guy is tough! Not kidding. It took me just as long to beat him alone as it took me to beat all the other robots combined to get to number 1. He kicked my ass. Over and over and over and over again. Getting up close is a no-go, since blocking doesn't seem to help at all here, and he fires that ranged arm quite frequently. I'm guessing that it has infinite ammo as well? Once he gets one hit in, he'll stagger you and rack up hits. With the damage he does, it doesn't take long to drain your health. In the end, after a long struggle, I managed to beat Zenith by mostly jumping on him and staying in the air as much as possible.
It's me, Mario!
Upon my victory and initial excitement, whoa! I was met by another surprise. A victory screen proclaiming me champion, featuring my robot battling its way to victory in a blue nebulous void. I honestly wasn't expecting any kind of end screen other than maybe a picture, so this was a pretty nice cherry on top of finally beating Zenith. I played the Sega Saturn version for this review, though I do have both versions. The PlayStation version is the more polished game. You start in third person and select control of the camera. Block is easier to find at triangle, and square is the left arm while circle is the right. X is jump, and the bottom triggers control the special attacks. Other than that, the controls are the same. Some of the robots have different names, though they fit into the same theme we got here. Bosses are different and have special weapons that are unavailable, unlike the Saturn, and are not hidden in shadow in the PlayStation. Also, the narrator actually reads his lines smoothly. The Saturn version lacks this polish, and he frequently forgets a word when announcing the results. It's kinda great. I didn't beat the PlayStation version, I just played enough to get some comparisons since I'm not as attached to that version. This seems as good a time as any to talk about my personal experiences with the game and its main draw to me. When I was a kid late in middle school, I got a Sega Saturn with a couple games, including Robo Pit in a garbage bag. I forgot who gave it to me or how I got it, but I remember the garbage bag. It was a basketball game and a hockey game. We also had Nights into Dreams and a 3D controller to boot. The highlight of our Saturn play was always Robo Pit. Even if we couldn't save our robots for next time, we still had tons of fun goofing around. And I still have fond memories of fighting makeshift tournaments with my brother and my cousins. Multiplayer is definitely where the game shines. The AI goes from not challenging at all to brutal, whereas multiplayer feels more like a fair challenge. That's not to say that combat is super balanced. It's not. But nothing beats kicking the shit out of your buddy's robot and watching it slowly drift back and explode as the narrator stutters out the results. When he remembers to. I still come back to this with friends every now and then. This was the first time I beat the ladder, and that was personally satisfying, no matter how I got there.
Would I recommend RoboVid? Yeah, I would. I wouldn't recommend it for a single player, and it has no story. But I'd recommend it for a good day of robot fighting with friends. The game's definitely a bit of a diamond in the rough, and even though it had a lot of potential that I didn't feel it squandered, I do feel it certainly could have been more polished, and it could have been built upon a little more. But overall, it was a good game. Not that good of a game. Definitely pretty damn flawed, but I enjoyed the hell out of it. Maybe it's just my rose-tinted glasses, but the game sounds fun or interesting to you. The game received mixed reviews, from great to meh. I think the game is a pretty great multiplayer experience, so definitely check it out. Now there's a sequel release for PlayStation only, but I don't have that. You can bet once I do, I'll definitely review it as well. Well, thank you guys for tuning in and listening to me ramble about one of my favorite games. If you're not already subscribed, please do. It helps a hell of a lot. I got more stuff coming, a bunch of little projects that I've been working on that should be up soon, as well as, the bigger projects I've been trying to push through. I also live stream twice a week with mixed results. Well, I hope you enjoyed, and have a great day, everybody. Now, I'm going to end this video. Aha!
This is where I would put links to other videos I've made, if I made any. Guess I'll just leave you on some advice from Trumpy himself, some of that kickin' RoboPip music. Earn and invest a lot of money, and you will become the world's richest person, and the world will be yours. Remember, always think of yourself first, others later. It should always be me first. Alrighty. Today I'm going to talk about... That doesn't seem right. Okay, today I'm going to be showing off my VCD collection. I'd be pretty surprised if you've ever heard of a VCD, unless you live in an area of the world in which they were readily available. VCD stands for Video Compact Disc, and they're exactly what the name implies. CDs with highly compressed videos on them. They were developed in 1993 by Sony, Philips, JVC, and Matsushita, also referred to as the White Book standard. They're an interesting piece of media history, and are still used in some developing countries to this day. They should not be confused with their irritatingly similarly named predecessor, the CDV, or CD video format, which could only hold 5 minutes of video, and was therefore restricted to mostly music videos. Basically, VCDs were a stepping stone from VHS to DVD. A stepping stone that most of the world skipped, but a stepping stone nonetheless. The format failed to take off for a number of reasons. The biggest probably being that VHS was more widespread and was cheaper. Also, you could write over a VHS, whereas you couldn't do that on a CD at the time. Another big factor to consider was size. A VHS could hold about 3 hours of footage, where a VCD could only hold an hour and 50 minutes or so. This means that feature-length movies usually come on 2 VCDs and need to be changed roughly halfway through viewing. Size may have been an issue, but quality wasn't. The quality of a VCD is comparable to VHS, with MPEG-1 Part 2 video. However, with a digital format comes digital problems. While VHS certainly has its own issues with warping and the like, VCDs have a unique digital artifacting. In my own personal experience, the audio often gets off track, and green blocks can be seen covering small chunks of the frame. This makes viewing a movie unreasonably agitating. This may be the result of errors in the encoding process on the VCDs that I have, though I doubt it, as the VCDs that I have appear to be official releases and not simply homemade copies. I've heard these artifacts can come from lower quality knockoff VCD cards, like the one I have, which is the more believable option to me. So, if VCDs never caught on in my country, how do I have one? Simple. eBay. Well, maybe not that simple. See, as a retro game collector, I try to get the best or most accurate quality that I can from my systems, or as best I can afford. So, with the Sega Saturn being one of my favorites in my collection, it didn't take me long to find out about the VCD expansion cards made for the system. Realistically, they serve no purpose in a North American console, but do improve cutscene quality in very limited games imported from Japan, as well as play VCDs. With an action replay, it's simple and easy to change your console's region, allowing you to access these features. As most Saturn collectors quickly find, imports are the only way to play some games for the system, either due to not being released outside of Japan, or not selling well, and being ludicrously priced nowadays and hard to find. So, even though it only works with about 16 games, it's kinda superfluous. I had to have it. The listing had the card and 6 VCDs included, and so I present my VCD collection. Such classics as Alien vs. Predator 2, Requiem, Pathfinder, The Legend of the Ghost Warrior, Final Destination 3, and Pandorum, as well as Drag Me to Hell and Trick or Treat, which are both movies that I love. Pretty much sold me on it. Though, I do have a soft spot for Final Destination, and I can't quite place Pandorum. But these other two? Well, just forget these other two, because I certainly do. Trick or Treat has a cheaper looking case, but the disc seems to be legitimate, so I'm guessing this is just a cost-cutting thing or a repack. They all come in standard style CD cases with some differing methods of storing the 2 discs and orientation, which totally isn't fucking annoying. But here's the catch you may have picked up on if you were paying attention earlier. I don't have an officially licensed VCD card in my Saturn. I have an obscenely resemblant one. I mean, yeah, with a second look, it's pretty obvious it's a bootleg, with it saying movie card incorrectly on it. But hell, I was a bit inebriated, and it was my second eBay purchase ever. Also, the movies alone kind of sold me on it. Speaking of which, you may have noticed these are all American movies. Now, VCDs don't have a menu, or chapters, language options. So, luckily for me, these movies weren't dubbed. Rather, they're all in English, but they have subtitles imposed over the bottom of the screen that can't be removed as they were hard-coded during the burning process. One more comparison to leave you on is this. HD resolution is over 2 million pixels, and VCD is under 85,000 pixels. So it's pretty shoddy quality even before any errors. So that's my VCD collection. A neat little piece of history. Though they were quickly phased out by DVDs, they still remained a popular alternative in Southeast Asia for years. I'd like to have a nice official VCD card and see if I still get the artifacts. Specifically, I'm looking for the RGVC2. It would be nice to get consistent quality and a more enjoyable viewing experience. I mean, hell, sometimes it's just nice to put a VCD in the Sega Saturn and boot her up. Stupid as it is. Thank you guys for tuning in. I hope these things entertain you as much as they do me. Stay tuned for more stuff coming up. I stream once a week now, and I upload when I can. You know the deal. Like, subscribe, all that junk. It does help a hell of a lot. Have a great day, everyone.
Are you ready for battle? Yes. Suppose we should talk about Fox.
I'm betting there's a good number of you out there thinking, I kinda remember that. And even more of you asking, what the fuck is that? Well, this is a pox. You're probably waiting for me to explain what that stands for. Literally nothing. I searched for way too long to try to find a meaning behind that name. And just found the search results as empty as I am on the inside. That being said, leave your best guess in the comments. I'll even pin some of my favorites. My best guess? Personal Overt Xenomorph. Now, back in 2001, this product was tested, marketed, and then taken off the market. Yes, all of that within a year. Who made this thing? Ah, Hasbro. I'm sure this isn't the last time we'll hear that name on this channel. They first tested the system in Chicago with a viral marketing campaign that I absolutely love. They went to schools and skate parks and asked the kids who they thought the coolest person they knew was, who the coolest kid they knew was. And the kids that answered that they were the coolest kids they knew, those were the ones that got the system. That's just great. I mean, it worked out well for them. It got a lot of positive feedback, I guess. They were going to test it in 9 other areas beyond Chicago, but instead moved forward with a full launch at the insistence of some higher-ups at Hasbro, as well as Toys R Us. Remember them. They hopped on board right after the test in Chicago, and were a huge reason that they pushed for the September 23rd, 2001 launch. You can probably see where this is going, but before we talk about why the game was taken off the market, let's talk about the game itself. There are 3 versions, as you can see. Psychro, Plasmo, and Spino. The gameplay is the same for each version, The main differences are the stats your alien creature is focused on and the body parts available to you in the game to customize them. To quote the manual, the red Spino have strength, power, and force. The green Psychro have speed, agility, and stealth. The blue Plasmo have deception, defense, and camouflage. So, the story in the game is that these 3 alien species were discovered after crashing to Earth on a meteorite the same year of release. The device itself is supposed to be some kind of containment unit for your pox infector. Yes, that is actually what they're referred to as. Can already see why this might be taken off the market. The controls are probably the easiest thing to comprehend in this game, and even they can be a bit confusing. There's a D-pad for navigating the menus and levels, the top button to access the menu, the second button is the action or confirm button, and the bottom button is the cancel button. There's a power button that puts the system in and out of sleep mode, and a send button that is used to battle other pox infectors. On the back of the unit, there's a reset that can be easily accessed, as well as a weird-looking mechanism used for the battery slot. When you need to change the batteries, you have 30 seconds to do so, otherwise you'll lose all your data. First, remove the screw. Then with the new batteries in hand, flip the switch open and take the back plate off. Quickly switch the batteries. Replace the back plate and flip the switch back to closed. You can then screw it back in without much worry, and everything should be saved as long as you were really quick. The reason it's a bit of a pain is that while there is an onboard battery, it's incredibly small, giving you a tiny window of time to switch the batteries. It does give you a heads up if your batteries are running low, but if you don't have any on hand, then you're pretty much boned. When you boot it up, you get this logo screen and sick rave music. I'd love to remix that. Honestly. The sound design is pretty good here. It's fitting for the game and the overall design. The first time you boot it up, you have to input your name, followed by inputting an ID for your Pox Containment Unit, or PCU, which is used to distinguish yourself in the RF battling system. If you and your friend both have one of these, then don't use the same ID name, or else they won't be able to recognize each other, and you'll be unable to battle. After that, you go to the Forge, where you make your infectors by selecting body parts you've unlocked. There's heads, bodies, and tails. At the start, you'll have 3 options of each available. They all look identical, but have different effects in combat. You'll have to have the manual on hand to see what those effects are. There are 5 head designs total, 8 bodies, 7 tails, and each of those designs has 3 different variants for combat, as well as 1 body part that appears to have 3 different effect variations that are blocked out in the manual as classified. Yet, they have the numbers listed. These all have to be unlocked in the single-player arena mode. When in the Forge, you can select the attack pattern you'll use in battles, though you'll select this before fights in the arena, so it's for use in the RF battles, really. The attack system is pretty weird. You have 3 attack phases and 3 columns for each attack phase: with, at, and defend. You select the body part for each column during the attack phase. For example, attack with the tail at the opponent's head, and I'll defend my infector's body this phase. Then repeat that process 2 more times and pick a name for your infector. Over the course of the game, you can build and have 4 infectors stored in the system, and can't delete the infector that has brackets around it. Now, those body parts with their different effects in battle sometimes are activated by or during combat with species of pox infectors during RF battles, as indicated by the letters beside the body part's number. I don't know how this affects their activation in the arena mode, though some of these body parts are activated when fighting infectors of the same species, and I assume the infectors in the arena are the same species as the infectors you make, since you collect the body parts unique to your species during the arena. Either way, this is the battle page in the manual. That's way too much for me as an adult, and I can only imagine how many kids just flipped right past the instruction booklet. So, instead of studying to be able to play the game, I'm just gonna do what I did when I was a kid and brute force the thing. I'll take more notes of the effects and complexity of the system when I actually get into RF battling, and I'm sure I'll grasp it along the way. But I mean, damn, that's way too convoluted. Now, even before getting into the arena gameplay and showing you what that's like, I'm gonna warn you, this is gonna be a slog. First off, when you beat the boss in an arena level referred to as the Overspore, you get to choose from 3 different body part effect variations. This means you have to play each level 3 times and beat the Overspore to get each one of them in your library. There are 17 levels in the arena. That's 51 right there. But that's not quite the end of it yet. Remember that there's 3 species of these things, and that I have all 3 of them. So that brings us up to 153. Let's make that even more fun on top of it, seeing as how I don't have the patience to learn the mechanics or effects. Let's throw on the fact that if you lose in the arena, it's going to be a slog just to get back to where you were battling. So, this is going to be an absolute chore that luckily you don't have to sit through most of. Look at you. When you enter a level in the arena, this Stargate-looking thing is the portal that your character entered the level in. And you'll find these weird windsock-looking things that are referred to in the manual as pylons. They're just here for scenery to help you not get lost in the samey maze-like design. There are also these tube-shaped things that are called cryopods and contain either poison that hurts you, a battle, sometimes a key, or currency that is creatively called Cur. This can be used in the body regeneration shop, which is a crab-like building that you can use to obtain healing proteins and hit points for your infector. These doors that are sometimes hidden are locked and must be opened by finding keys or clearing out opponents, as well as there's spots in the walls that you can break open by running into that have areas you'll have to access. Before you can fight the Overspore, you have to complete all the tasks for the level. This means clearing out the enemies and collecting all the keys. The levels aren't too hard to progress in, but it can take some time to get all the way through them because of how long and poorly designed the maze-like levels are. And the battles. Oh lord, the battles! This here is the breaking point of the game. Ultimately, it lives or dies on the battle system. Is it fun or not? No, it's not fun. It's boring as sin. There are no words accurate enough to describe the level of boring. Here, take a look. To compare it to the game craze it clearly wanted to emulate, at least Pokemon battles taken without the lush world and gameplay, they have flourished during battles and different things and visuals for the moves, even when they were at their most basic. And you also get to pick something different each round. Here you're locked into 3 attack phases, and each attack is pretty much the same animation no matter which body part you attack with. It just all looks the same, and it gets old fast. That being said, I am definitely not beating all of these, and getting every body part, but I just don't have the patience for that. But I do have a goal here. My plan is to beat Psychro, getting at least 2 body parts per level, meaning I'll have to play the levels twice. Plasmo, playing the levels only once, and play at least a couple levels of Spino. Still gonna be a heck of a task that I'm not gonna drag you through every level of. Instead, here's a montage of my playthrough of these. And here's the final boss from the Psychro version, which of course was a drag to get to. there you go. Good and anticlimactic after all these years. As for the RF battles, there they are. Just as boring. Even if I was battling with a buddy who had trained up their infector, it would still be boring as fuck. First, you both have to have the RF switched on in the options menu, then hold the send button to send out your pox to another system. It then shows up in their system as an intruder, and they have to beat them to proceed. And beware, an intruder that remains in your system after the battle clock runs down and disappears, but it also deactivates one of the body parts in your library. You have to play the arena level that you collected that body part in to reactivate it. Ties in intruder battles result in the infector being sent back to its system. If you win, you take the intruder to stasis. You can store up to 8 intruders in stasis and either purge them from your system or dissect them and get a new body part. If you have the body part, it's indicated by a dot. An up arrow means that it has better hit points than your currently equipped body part, and a down arrow means that it has less. Another feature that is really interesting and has tons of potential is just wasted by how boring the battles are. Let's talk a little bit about my personal connection with these things. When I was a kid at my dad's on the weekends, my cousins used to come over, and one weekend, their grandmother came over with a bunch of these things. And even though she's not in any way, shape, or form related to myself or my brother, after she had my cousins pick one, we got to pick one ourselves. I picked the Plasmo, and this one here is actually the exact one I used to have as a kid. The other two I bought for the review and to complete the set. At the time, I didn't have any sort of handheld, so it was pretty great having this thing. Especially having competition for it right off the bat. But it really didn't take long for me to get bored of the thing, only like 2 weeks. And after that, I really only brought it on long car rides. And one time on the highway, I managed to link up with somebody, a random stranger, for a battle, and that was pretty awesome. But I put the thing away in a box for years and haven't thought of the thing until we're going to do this review. They were taken off the market pretty quickly after their introduction in 2001, since Hasbro had gotten several complaints from parents who felt uncomfortable with their children playing a game in which they infected each other's systems and battled with bug-like alien viruses. It raised concerns with the higher-ups after September 11th of that year and the threat of anthrax at the time. And honestly, I never thought to link those two as a kid. That's probably why I got one when I did as a kid. They were probably in the reduced bin, basically, when they got them. Even if there wasn't any controversy, I really don't think these things would have remained anything for long. I think they still would have just kind of faded out real quick. Because the battles are just so boring, and the system is so convoluted. It's way too convoluted for a kid. It's not going to hold their attention span. So I think this being taken off the market, in the end of the day, was a good decision. Are you an adult who plays Pokemon and knows how to break the game through minute details, breeding, and Pokemon characteristics, and looking for something a little more unnecessarily complex? Well, then you're one of the few people I might be able to recommend this for. If you had one of these as a kid and just want to get it for the nostalgia kick, they're easy to find and they're relatively cheap. But the minute you play the thing, the rose-tinted glasses are going to fall off, and you're just going to be bored to tears. Now, they might increase in value over time, seeing as how they were taken off the market relatively suddenly, but the fact that they got around before that happened pretty consistently makes me think that's not likely to be the case. It was a neat concept with some interesting lore behind it, but it just fell so short in execution. So much wasted potential here. Although, I'm glad to have all three of them, to have a full collection, even if I'm never gonna use the damn things. Thanks for tuning in today and listening to me groan about a handheld that I used to have when I was a kid. You know the deal. Subscribe, all that shit. It does help a lot. And let me know if you have any personal memories with the POX system. And don't forget to tell me what you think POX stands for in the comments below. Alrighty guys, I hope you enjoyed and learned a little something. Have a great one, everybody.
Wait, his name is Roach. That don't look like a fucking roach to me. Fucking dude I'm fighting might as well be a cockroach. Shit's invincible. I can drop a nuke on this bitch and he ain't gonna die.
Also, I have the urge to stomp on him.
Fuck me.
Right there, I'm fighting the boss on this level right now.
I'm still fighting the first guy.
You're still fighting the first guy? I killed 2 people already. Like, what the fuck?
I've been fighting this dude for like 10 minutes now. He's blocked literally like everything, even though I've hit him like 6 times. He's hit me once for a point.
What did you go in with loadout? Did you just all spam one thing like
I didn't know what the hell I was setting up.
First fucking couple fights I did, that's all I did was just H. We're going all head.
Yeah. You're shooting from your head, at your head, and blocking for your head.
Fuck you. You know what, Pikes? That's pretty fucking rude. You act like I was excited to play.
I can't even play. I'm kind of mad about that because all I could do is replay.
Yeah, that's the menu you gave me before it crashed. Just said replay. Hey, fucking freak the fuck out. Hey, replay.
Yeah, apparently we already fought. So the game just took the fight and...
Fuck me. With that fucking giant pox of yours that just fucked me.
I got a big pox.
My pox is a little green. That's probably not good. I think you should see the doctor. Yo, dude, is it cool if... Just take a look at my pox real quick. See if that's normal.
Fuck that boss fight!
No, shit pox, dude, that's herpes.
I waited like...
Oh shit, dude, you got the clap. Wonder what I should talk about today. I think you already know what to talk about. Yay! Ah, shit. Time to talk about Kung Pao. Kung Pao Enter the Fist is a PG-13 action comedy film that parodies old kung fu movies. It was written by, directed, and stars Steve Odekirk. It was released in 2002 by 20th Century Fox. The movie is composed of footage from the 1976 Hong Kong film Tiger and Crane Fists, which is also called Savage Killers in some places, as well as some new footage. The voices are all dubbed over by Steve Odekirk, save for Jennifer Sung, who plays the character Woe. Also, I should give a shout out to the actor from the archival footage who plays Master Payne, aka Betty, in this movie, an actor by the name of Fei Lung. This dude, even in this movie, has a presence that shines through. Even with all the silly lines he has dubbed and the character that he is in this movie, he's still intimidating as hell, and a major reason that I need to watch Tiger and Crane Fist now. Our main character is the Chosen One, played by Steve Odekirk. He is on a quest for revenge against the man who killed his parents when the Chosen One was a baby. He is trained by an ill martial arts master named Master Tang, who at first turns him away until seeing the Chosen One's birthmark, a sentient tongue named Tungy. After the man who killed his parents shows up in town, the Chosen One goes to fight him, but finds him already in a battle with another martial artist named Master Do. In the end, Master Do passes away and the Chosen One gets some needed advice. When he returns, he finds the town has been massacred by Master Payne, now going by Betty. Finally, the Chosen One masters the technique that will take down Betty, and we get our climactic battle. The day is saved in the end by Tungy, and we get a preview of Kung Pao 2, Tongue of Fury. To emulate the dubbing of an old martial arts movie, Steve Odekirk used nonsense sentences when filming his bits that were imposed, then dubbed over that with the correct line from the script, so that the voice would appear poorly synced. Sometimes you can make out what he's actually saying if you try hard enough, and there's a feature on the DVD that allows you to watch the movie with the original audio from the archival footage, as well as the original nonsense audio they recorded. This alternative audio track is creatively named What They Are Really Saying. There is also an audio track option referred to as Book on Tape, in which all the lines are read by a calm British narrator. The scene with Mushu Fasa was actually shot in Steve Odekirk's backyard with a digital camera and a blow dryer used to get the wind effect. Apparently, the movie was originally going to be an animated movie parodying anime, before Odekirk and the studio at the time decided to change it to live action. Another interesting tidbit is that Jimmy Wang Yu, who played the protagonist in Tiger and Crane Fists, wrote, directed, and starred in that movie, much like Steve Odekirk in this film. There was that preview for a sequel at the end of the movie, but that was just composed of deleted scenes, and it was never intended to be a sequel. Even though there were rumors that it was stuck in some kind of development hell, even Steve Odekirk came out and said, no, it was just a joke. It was just a gag at the end of the movie. Though in 2015, there were rumors floating around that he was working on a sequel of sorts, kind of more like a spiritual successor to Kung Pao. The supposed sequel wouldn't have actually followed the storyline or anything at all. It would have just been a different style of movie that they dubbed over and made fun of. But that never materialized or any more news on it since, so I'm gonna need citation on that one. My personal connection with this movie goes pretty deep, and I tried not to let that cloud my judgment when it came to doing the review. But I watched it years ago when it was relatively new, with my brother and my father. We rented it from Blockbuster one night, so that's a long time ago. And we watched it that night and just laughed our asses off. So from then on, it became our go-to rental movie if we couldn't find anything else. Every time after that, we go to Blockbuster or any, local movie rental place. Whenever we would run into the thing where neither of us could find a movie to pick, we'd always just be like, well, we can always agree on Kung Pao. Let's just do that. It's pretty obvious at this point that I love this movie. It's an over-the-top, goofy, silly spoof movie that, like any good cult classic movie, is just full of just classic quotes. So many of the quotes from this movie, to this day, I still use completely out of context. Its great moments and jokes are just laugh-out-loud hilarious. Though it also has a lot of moments that just fall flat and jokes that don't really land. It's a very immature movie. Younger audiences will probably get a hell of a kick out of it, but if you're a little older, at times it can absolutely be a little bit grating. The effects also seemed a bit better at the time than they do now. You can faintly see the outlines of the older footage with Steve Odekirk placed over the original actor. Though I still think it holds up pretty well. Critics generally panned the movie, and the audience reaction was mixed, from straight up loving the movie to it just being okay. The movie did pretty good, however, when it ran in theaters, earning over $16 million in total domestic gross. One movie I've seen a couple critics compare it to is What's Up, Tiger Lily, which isn't quite a fair comparison in my eyes to make. Just from the trailers alone, it's clear they're going for different things with the same method. With this being such a divisive movie, it's kind of hard to recommend it. Personally, I think that the peaks outweigh all the misses in the movie. I think the great laugh-out-loud moments completely outweigh all the misses. But I can see that the lowbrow humor could definitely put certain viewers off. If you've seen it back in the day, it's definitely worth a rewatch. And if you get your buddies together and, you're in the right state of mind, then you're in for a fun time. I recommend it if you're just looking for something silly, simple, and stupid
with a bunch of classically quotable lines that'll just make you laugh your ass off most of the time. Thank you for tuning in and listening to me gush about one of my favorite B movies from back in the day. A movie that did the rounds pretty well in its time, but is now kind of more of a cult classic. You know the usual deal. Like, subscribe, all that shit. And let me know in the comments if you have any memories attached to this movie. Alright, everybody. Have a great one. Oh, my neighbors are like, oh, he's just practicing his nudism. He's only halfway there. I gotta give it a minute, because I can't just walk back out. People look at me like, the fuck is wrong with this guy? Oh, I'm making a fucking tit out of myself. It's the best I can do.
Alrighty, let's play a game, huh? Now, keep your eye on the ball. That's okay. It's right here. Don't feel bad. I'm really good at this because of a game that I had as a kid for a relatively forgotten Sega console, Sega Pico. Let's get into it. Okay, I'm just gonna roll with things. I'm just gonna roll with it. The Sega Pico, or Kids Computer Pico if you lived in Japan, was an edutainment video game console released in Japan in 1993, Europe and America in 1994, as well as South Korea in 1995. It was released right around the Mark II Genesis and lasted until a couple years before the end of the Dreamcast, before being replaced by its successor, the Advanced Pico Bina, in 2005. Now, why did Sega make an educational console designed for children around 2 to 8 years old? Well, at the time, Sega was still riding pretty high, and was just beginning to make a lot of the decisions that would lead to their console downfall. Also, this was a relatively new and untapped market. Sure, PCs did have a decent amount of educational games at the time, but they weren't nearly as ubiquitous as they are today. Doom itself had only launched a year prior in America, so it was still a relatively untapped market, and Sega didn't really have a lot of competition yet. Also, the Sega Pico was designed to be tough and durable for its target demographic: small children. The system itself is in an interesting clamshell or suitcase-like shape. It has the logo on the front panel, which is different depending on your model and region. The front panel folds down to reveal the touchpad and controls. The back panel that is standing up contains the actual console guts and the cartridge slot, as well as another hidden touchpad. You'll notice this odd shape on the back and the panel near the cartridge slot. This is to accommodate the unique cartridges. But before we get to that, let's hop back to the front panel. We have 4 multicolored buttons, one in each direction. Clockwise from the top, they are white, green, orange, and purple. There's one big red button above these. Then we finally get to the touchpad and magic pen, which actually has a button of its own, resemblant of a mouse click. The touchpad is used for everything from drawing to selecting activities and reading words. The magic pen is also used with the hidden touchpad on the back of the panel to interact with the pages on the cartridge. That's right, pages! The cartridges come in this interesting book format. You slot the cartridge in at an angle and snap it back into place.
This is due to the design of the cartridges and for ease of loading them. Not just because kids enjoy that extra level of interactivity, though they do. The title screen opens with the cover page of the book. To start, you simply flip the page. The touchpad does various things in each game, but often selects one of the activities on the page. The buttons also vary throughout, but control a good majority of the activities.
So here is my collection of games.
Richard Scarry's Huckle and Lowly's Busiest Day Ever, Crayola Create-A-World, Magic Crayons, Disney's The Lion King Adventures at Pride Rock, The Muppets On the Go, and last and most expensive, Sonic the Hedgehog's Game World. But let's start with Huckle and Lowly's Busiest Day Ever. There's not much to do on the first page. You can get the firemen to put out a fire, and there's one vaguely confusing minigame. It's mostly Huckle pronouncing things for us. Well, they are games for small children. What did you expect? Moving on, in the bakery, there's a good amount of objects to click on, but this time there's 2 activities. The first is a simple game of memory that teaches us about different baked goods. The second is a gingerbread decorating game with little options. The next page only has one minigame, in which you mix paints to get the right color to paint a picture in the background. Other than that, you can paint a couple background objects in the background on this page. Next, we get to the park, where Huckle introduces us to his friends. There's a couple interactive objects and one minigame, which is a game of hide and seek.
On the last page, we have something we're gonna see a lot.
Coloring book paint program. Here we have a couple outlines you can fill in, or you can just draw your own picture. There's 10 colors, a fill tool, smaller and larger brushes, as well as an eraser and clear all tools. These pages are usually pretty limited, but they were always one of my favorite features. Crayola Create-A-World. Before we can even get into it, just listen to that music. This one has some kickin' tunes.
Now this is the only game that I have the instruction booklet for. And a quick glance at it is probably how I figured this one out so fast, because it's a bit confusing.
The manual also clarifies for me how you would go about saving pictures that you drew with this console. You would have to record it through VHS and from there, capture a frame of it. Today the process is pretty similar with a capture card, though it's a lot easier now. Getting back to the game, the first couple of pages are filled with stamps, little drawings that you can grab and put into your drawing. The stamps are broken up into the screens that share a theme on each page. Exotic Adventures includes jungle, savanna, plains, desert, beach, sea, ocean, port, pole, and space. American Adventures includes farm, ranch, forest, camp, woods, field, lake, backyard, market, and park. City scenes includes airport, clothes, shoes, hats, toys, circus, gas station, restaurant, sports, and town. Every time you load your picture, or any with the stamps on them, it takes a minute as it loads everything one at a time for each shape. On the pre-made ones, it didn't happen, but by the time I was done with my marketing masterpiece, it took a good minute to load everything up. The next page has all the other activities on it. Follow Me is a game in which you attempt to trace the line as the crayon creates it. I say attempt not because you can't,
But because aside from the first time I played it for this video, I just scribbled the pen around like I was 2 and didn't know any better. And it worked great.
Correct Me has you figure out what doesn't belong in the picture. They give you a glimpse of what it should look like beforehand, and it automatically moves to another picture once you're done. Make Me has you reassemble the parts of individual stamps, and finally Spell Me has you put the letters into order to spell a word. As you do, the silhouettes get a little brighter. The last page is another paint program screen. This time, there's more options and more tools. as well as some pretty cool features. You can take the stamps you used earlier and paint on top of them. There's a rectangular tool, a circle tool, swap planes tool, a sponge tool that removes everything that's drawn freehand, and a text tool that adds a text box at the bottom of the screen.
Then there's the good stuff.
There's a tartan button that makes a plaid design based on the line you draw and the spots you click, an XY mirror that splits your cursor into 4 and mimics what you draw on different axes, a separate X mirror and Y mirror that split the cursor on those axes, and that I couldn't access, and the multiplicator, which makes a pretty wicky kaleidoscope effect, taking the mirror thing to the max. There's 15 shades of colors this time, giving you a pretty good selection of shades. One of those brush colors is rainbow. Using this brush and the effects at my disposal, I managed to make some pretty cool trippy stuff.
Magic crayons. At first I thought this game was related to the Crayola game that I have, but it turns out I just have 2 Sega Pico games about crayons.
Here's my custom start screen that I painstakingly filled in, since you can fill in just about everything on the start page. All of the pages except for the last one are coloring book sections. This is the only one to have a linear story so far. This old guy, who I have no idea what his relation to these kids are, comes in and sucks all of the color out of the room with his magic vacuum. Then he runs off and we get to color in the page. There's no brush tool. Instead, the crayons use a fill tool.
I don't know why, but that's just how it works. There's a decent selection of colors here, as well as some that flash and an interesting amount of designs.
However, this takes away from how many standard colors there are, leaving you with a pretty poor palette, even with 22 colors. After the first page, I just gave up on matching the colors on screen to the ones on the pages of the cartridge, and just filled them in, not giving a damn.
This is when I discovered there are mini-games in here.
There's a key hidden on each page that if you click it by clicking the page and not the touchpad, instead of filling it with color, you get taken to a minigame. I can't access the one on the first page as my cursor just won't respond to that area. The second page holds a Tangrams minigame. You know, that game where you make shapes with other shapes? The third page holds a basic Monster Maker minigame that doesn't hold too many options. The fourth page holds the final minigame and the conclusion of the story. In this game, you keep recoloring food after the old man sucks all of the color out of it so that the animals can't eat it. As the animals eat the fruit when the color is gone, they begin to slowly lose their own color. However, I don't think that there's a fail state here. After a few rounds of this with increasing numbers of fruit, he sucks the color out of everything outside and attempts to drain the kids of their color. The cursor now controls the kids awkwardly, and clicking throws balloons that I assume are filled with paint. Once you win, color is returned, and you even color up the old man's trench coat, making him look like he belongs in Scooby-Doo. The last page is again a paint program. Here we get 10 colors and a couple of outlines to color, as well as the basic tools. No clue on what this camera thing does, but whatever. Disney's The Lion King, Adventures at Pride Rock.
This is one of 2 games that I have the box for, which is why I know that this game and the previous game are both recommended for ages 3 to 7. Crayola Create a World, because I have the instruction manual, I also know the age range for that one, which is 3 to 7 if you were wondering.
This game is filled with minigames and a couple interactive objects. On the first page, we have this minigame where you fly around as Zazu and try not to run into things as well as fly by animals. I found that if you just keep flying down the ground, since you don't crash into it and you can go through rock arcs with no problem, there's not much of a challenge here since you just keep going right. And even if you let go of the controls, you don't really stop, just fly to the right slower. I don't know if this game has in it.
I got bored after a bit and just gave up trying to figure out if the minigames had an end state and just flew through them. So, that's what we're gonna do here. This page also has a Simon Says minigame with Cub Simba. The next page is a simple maze game, a game where you hop from letter to letter in alphabetic order, and a puzzle mix-up that took me way too long to figure out for a kid's game. The third page has the same silhouette game from Create-A-World, a game where you catch falling bugs as Pumbaa and a basic platformer where you play as Cub Simba and your goal is simply to get to the right side of the screen. The fourth page has a game where you count the twinkling stars, a game where, as Pumbaa, you click on all the bugs on screen that I think you're supposed to be counting in this game that I couldn't win at all. I figured out how to play, but I kept getting into unwinnable states. Seriously, fuck this minigame. The last page is, you guessed it, yet another paint program. This one has 12 colors and a couple of outlines of the Lion King characters. There are a couple of stamps you can cycle through, a camera inexplicably again, a button to change the background color, and a button to change the music, as well as all the standards. Muppets on the Go. This is definitely one of the best for the system. It has 2 difficulties, as well as a multiplayer of sorts. In each page, the Muppets are visiting a location, and there are a number of mini-games to play. On the first page, in the city, there are 3 games. One where you simply match up a silhouette with a toy on the train that's going around. One where you fit bricks into the right space to fill a wall and climb up on top of it. And one game where you avoid obstacles such as a mole and a chicken while you try to collect a number of eggs, all while in a large hedge maze. This game gets pretty damn annoying on higher difficulty levels, since you have no health bar, but lose an egg when you bump into obstacles. On the second page in the woods, there's a mini game where you try to keep ants and frogs from taking your food by clicking it after they try to run off with it. There's also a game of Frogger played fittingly with Kermit the Frog, that once you get across 3 times, lowers the bridge. Both of these games get surprisingly difficult in the later stages and on hard difficulty. The third page sees the Muppets Jeep stuck in the snow. There's only one game on here, and that was kind of confusing timing-wise. It's a game where you ski downhill and have to match a button combination in time, though I can't figure out exactly when to press it or to hold the buttons. The next page sees the Muppets at the beach, where there's 2 activities on this page. One game where you remember the order of sea life washed up on shore, and another which is the cup swap game. On all of these pages you can click on the Jeep and get it to honk, and there are some interactive objects sprinkled throughout. Also, as you complete mini-games, you'll get a scene of Kermit breaking a ribbon winning a race. On 2-player, whoever did better breaks the ribbon. After you beat the last level of a minigame and beat enough of them, you get an ending of sorts. Surprise! The last page isn't the paint program on this one, and it's the only one in my collection to not have a paint program for the last page.
On this screen, you can place fish that have different patterns of moving around the screen. There are 3 sizes and 3 colors of fish, as well as a jellyfish. You can have the fish swim in a circle, a triangle, a square, an oval, a straight line back and forth, an infinity loop, or a sharp or angled infinity loop. It's kinda like a virtual aquarium. Sadly, you can only have so many fish on screen at one time, and it's not that many. Though it's still a cool feature, and nice to have a little variety on the last page.
Now, the thing you all came for.
Sonic the Hedgehog's Game World. The title screen has a flashy opening, and you get to pick the number of players and difficulty, as well as one of 3 characters.
Since I'm an adult, I'll choose hard. Since he's my favorite, I'll choose Tails. And since I have no friends, I'll choose solo.
On the first page, we have a racing minigame in which all you do is spam the big red button as fast as you can. A game where you climb trees and whack your head on a counter that functions identically.
some kind of skee-ball racing game hybrid, in which bigger points move you further, a game in which you launch basketballs at walking basketball hoops, in which 3 was the best I could do.
Well, that was the weirdest thing I've scripted so far.
On the second page, we have a flag game, in which you quickly match the colored buttons in order of how they appeared on screen. A finicky as always crane game, a good old-fashioned wholesome game of Whack-A-Doctor Robotnik.
Oh, you know I kicked ass in this one. That's right. Excellent.
The third page has a game of memory that you literally have to make no mistakes to get the max prize. That's just crazy, and I barely squeaked by on this one, without trying to get it perfect. Then there's the slot machine fighting game that is nowhere near as fun or exciting as it sounds, that takes way too long to get through one round of.
Finally, we have the game that made me what I am at the cup game today as an adult. Alright, I used to beat this on hard as a kid. Let's see how rusty I am. I still got it.
On each of these pages, you can click on the characters in the background and see them say little snippets of dialogue.
Including a very important question. Questions we may never get an answer to. Damn it!
On the fourth page, we can click on all the main characters for a little more dialogue. And if we click on the Sega blimp, we get the credits. This is the final minigame, accessed by clicking on Robotnik. This one is weird, but then so is this whole game, really. In it, you run around each floor of the game and search under every object in the room for emeralds. There are a load of objects to avoid that will spin you out and give Robotnik an advantage. After you collect more emeralds and win, Robotnik proclaims his loss, and you're treated to a credits roll of all the characters in the game. Yeah, the last page is another damn paint program. There's 14 colors, including a rainbow brush and all the basics. You can change the music on this one by clicking the boombox, and you can flip the image as well. Shake it up with a wave effect. There's a selection of stamps from the game you can place, and a new tool, the spray can brush. There's also a Sonic icon that you click on to have one of the character's little sprites follow your cursor around on screen. Maybe this is what the camera button was for in the other games? I doubt it. I doubt I'll ever know. There's a couple outlines of Sonic characters as well to color. There we go. Vomit the Hedgehog. Please don't steal.
Before we talk about my personal connection with the system, let's talk a little bit about what killed the Sega Pico. Other than time, that is.
In 1999, a little thing called Leapfrog hopped onto the scene and was the top-selling toy in the US for 2001 and 2002, as well as the games for it being the top seller the next year. The Pico's successor, the Advanced Pico Bina, came out a couple years later in 2005, but it really couldn't put up a fight with Leapfrog, even with the advantage of being first on the scene. Nor did Sega want to after long. After all, this was just before they left the console market for good, and they actually worked with Leapfrog several times and the Pico was part of what inspired Leapfrog.
Even though the Pico was one of Sega's best-selling consoles, it was also one of its more easily forgotten. And the reason why is pretty clear. All the games for it are for small children, leaving it kind of undesirable to collectors. And in the end, leaving it forgotten, lost to time, and in the memories of people like me. That brings us to my personal connection with this system and with the games. Now, when I was building my collection, I tried to get a lot of the same games that I had when I was a kid, since mine got sold at a yard sale when I was really, really little. And these two actually came with the console when I bought it. And these ones here are all the ones that I had when I was a kid. My favorites as a kid were definitely Sonic the Hedgehog's Game World, The Muppets on the Go, and the Crayola Create a World game. I used to play the minigames in the Sonic game late into the night, laying on the floor with my hands at the controls, just having a blast. Also, I gotta mention that the Magic Crayons game actually had a storyline, and I definitely didn't see that one coming. Moving on to recommendations, it's tough to recommend this in any way. I mean, it's way too out of date if you want to get one for kids. It only plays children's games, so it's not really of any value to collectors. Unless you're a Sega completionist, in which case, here's one you may have forgotten. For me, even though I'll rarely use the thing and the games really aren't any fun to play at this age, it's still nice just to have one back in my collection. Have a little tiny piece of my childhood back. Side note, that Sonic game, it was $75. More than the console and 2 games. Almost more than everything else combined. Thank you guys for tuning in and listening to me ramble about a forgotten Sega console. Well, you know the deal. Like, subscribe, all that shit. And hopefully you learned a little something and were reasonably entertained. Have a great one, everybody.
God damn it! I know! Damn!
Good times. Wait. When did I get these on? Well, hopefully I can keep them off, as I talk about a faintly remembered show from my childhood. So let's talk about Mike, Lou, and Ugg. Damn it! It's gonna be harder than I thought. Mike, Lou, and Ugg, an animated television show from America. It was created by Mikhail Schindel, Mikhail Alvershin, and Charles Swenson, and it aired on Cartoon Network November 12, 1999. It ran until May 27, 2001. It was produced by Kinofilm and Studio Pilot over 2 seasons with a total of 26 episodes made. There's also a pilot episode that first aired on the Animation Showcase, What a Cartoon, which was the birthplace of a lot of classic Cartoon Network shows, such as Courage the Cowardly Dog, Dexter's Lab, Powerpuff Girls, Codename Kids Next Door, and the original incarnation of Billy and Mandy, Grim and Evil, just to name a few. Basically, all of the classics came from the showcase. The show is about Mike Mazinski, a foreign exchange student from New York who lives on an island with her 2 friends, Lou and Ugg, as well as Lou's pet turtle, Lancelot. The 3 get up to all sorts of antics on the island involving a colorful cast of island citizens. There's Wendell, who is the mayor and who's weak-willed father, Alfred, who thinks he's a great hunter and uses suction-cup arrows, who is Ugg's father, Marjorie is Ugg's mother and believes herself to be quite the artist, sculptor, and cook. Then there's Old Peace, who is an island elder that claims to know magic, and
is who people often seek advice from. There's also a group of 3 pirates who occasionally pop up and attempt to eat Lancelot, as well as talking animals. Mike is a tomboy who frequently reminisces about her life back in New York, voiced by Nika Futterman.
I love Nika Futterman. She's one of my favorite voice actresses. I just love that voice. And I didn't realize how much of her work I actually grew up with. Og is a genius who is soft-spoken and is voiced by D. Bradley Baker. Lulu often goes by Princess Lulu, even though she's not really a princess. And everyone on this island is Lulu. She is played by voice acting royalty. That's right, Nancy Cartwright. That was a pretty big shock to me too, as well as just how fast-paced the show can be. I was also surprised at just exactly how sarcastic Mike's character is, and I absolutely love the character's sense of humor. The episodes follow a pretty basic structure where Mike reminisces about something she misses in New York, and then Ugg invents an island version of the thing, and inevitably, chaos ensues. At the end of the day, oftentimes the turtle Lancelot will save the day, but not all the episodes have that. And there are some episodes that just ignore the formula altogether. I'm going to be going over 2 episodes today. Episode 9 from Season 1, and Episode 3 from Season 2. But before we get to that, this is a pretty good time to highlight that theme song.
On the island, pretty island, where nobody goes.
It's so catchy and fun. Moving on, this episode starts with Mike running errands around the island. She quickly gets tired of running around the whole island and pitches the idea of an apartment building to everyone. Her and Og strike up plans for a high-rise apartment building, and Mike oversees the town and building. Who has other plans, however, and switches the plans early on, leaving the entire building void of floors or rooms. The town discovers this as they finish. Before they can really confront them, Og arrives and warns them the building is about to collapse, which it promptly does from the inside. Also, there's this.
I wonder if there's a lesson in this, or if it was just a waste of time.
I learned that the strength of your bond is proportionate to the tensile strength of your bonding agent.
Yep, it was a waste of time.
This segment starts with Og looking a bit down, as it's his birthday and he's a little worried that his father is going to drag him out hunting again. He tells his father that he doesn't want to hunt, but his dad just completely ignores him. He gets dragged along as his father fails at hunting. During this, his animal buddies stumble upon Og at hunting. They misunderstand and confront Og with his father, who gets all kinds of messed up. Og explains that his father couldn't hurt a fly. Literally. Everyone makes up, and Alfred goes on thinking he's a great hunter. This episode starts with the starving pirates trying to find a way to get food. After consulting his bunny hand puppet, the pirate captain comes up with the idea to throw a message in a bottle out to sea. Mike finds the message and decides to give the pirates a chance. While talking with Marjorie, who is busy cooking, she finds that there's a big island feast coming up, and Mike tells them about Thanksgiving.
What's all this Thanksgiving? Only the best holiday there is, because it's all about giving. At first, the Indians gave and the Pilgrims took.
She then invites the pirates, whom she disguises as little girls, telling them to be on their best behavior. She tells the island that they're friends from back home and no one bats an eye. During the course of the feast, the gluttonous pirates eat almost everything, including the plates. Inevitably, they discover Lancelot, since they have an obsession with turtle soup. They all immediately chase him. They cause a ruckus and wind up back where they started, just a lot more bloated. In the next bit, Mike is getting sick of all the coconut-based food on the island, and reminisces about hot dogs from back home. She convinces Og to recreate them, and after a series of attempts, he is successful. It's not long before everyone on the island is addicted to the hot dogs. After they raid his hot dog cart, Og builds an automatic hot dog dispenser that gives everyone one, with no toppings. The islanders complain, and Og locks up his hot dog shop for good. The town then gets together in essentially an AA meeting to kick their hot dog addiction. This fails, and inevitably they confront Og, demanding more hot dogs. Once they bust his machine open, it reveals that the hot dogs are made of coconuts, and Mike quickly loses interest. The islanders all leave to go eat their usual food. The only real bit of trivia I'm giving the show is this screenshot from the OK KO crossover episode, in which you can see Lou turned into a statue. This crossover has a ton of cameos from past Cartoon Network shows. I mean, look, they even finally reference Moxie from their long-forgotten first compilation show. I can't speak for the quality of this episode, as I've never seen the show, but the level of nods to the old Cartoon Network shows is just plain awesome. Also, I just love this picture on IMDb. That's just fitting, I think. The show ended with no fanfare. There was no reference in the final episode of it being the final episode, or any kind of resolution of Mike getting off the island. Which kind of makes me think that they didn't know they weren't getting renewed. But on the plus side, at least it didn't end with some sort of cliffhanger. It did get reruns on the Boomerang channel from 2006 to 2011, and it's available on Cartoon Network on demand as of 2017. Finding a complete DVD, however, is a much more difficult and expensive task. Also, it appears that the DVD is missing the final episode of the series, as well as the pilot.
I watched this show as a kid when it first aired on Cartoon Network. Even though it wasn't my favorite on the network at the time, it was still one that I would consistently tune in to watch, and I definitely noticed when it vanished. Though with all the other great programs and stuff they had on the network at the time, as well as my short attention span, it didn't take long before I forgot about it and moved on. And it wasn't until years later in high school, actually, that something randomly jogged my memory, and I had to go back and rewatch it.
I hadn't watched the show since then, before watching as much as I could for the review, so I am looking at this with somewhat fresh eyes. Somewhat fresh eyes. It's pretty clear that I have a lot of fond memories attached to the show, and that I like it an awful lot. Though I admit that I did realize during the binge that I did, preparing for the review, that it's probably best in small doses. It got a little boring watching a ton of episodes back to back. It was obviously not as good as the competition it had on its own channel. It just doesn't stand up. Although that's a bit of a harsh comparison, as those are all literal classics for the network. I think it's a solid cartoon that stands up in the block of programming as a good supplement, but I don't think on its own that it stands up to just binge watching. It's still fun and bright, and has great voice acting, even if the plots get a little formulaic at times. If you watched it when it first aired, it's definitely worth checking out again, even if it is just to scratch a nostalgic itch. If you're looking for a fun, simple cartoon, it's definitely worth a peek. Thank you for tuning in today and listening to me talk about a forgotten show from Cartoon Network that I grew up with. You know the usual deal, subscribe and all that shit. Hopefully you learned a little something and enjoyed the video. And as always, have a great one, everybody. Fuck it.
On the island, pretty island, where nobody goes. Palm tree and blue sky, fish are jumping high. It's an island where nobody knows. Ain't no burger stand, ain't no disco band. On the island where nobody goes.
Now, this feels familiar. Oh,
I know what this is.
Really? Okay, let's talk about video now. To start, let's take a trip back to the Wild West of technology in the year 2003.
YouTube was still 2 years away. The internet was just beginning to take over our lives as computers found their way into more and more homes, and Netflix was still in its infantile form, dealing with DVDs through the mail, not offering streaming yet. It was a very different world with no smartphones and a completely different landscape of technology.
So how did one watch a video on the go? The obvious answer is portable DVD players, but they were still relatively new and expensive. So what were some other options? Well,
around this time you had Mattel's Juice Box in 2004, Game Boy Advance Video, which was also released in 2004, and what we're here to talk about today, the Video Now player.
It was released in 2003, so it was one of the first on the market.
It was made by Hasbro under their subsidiary, Tiger Electronics, of whom you're more familiar with from their handheld games.
Already starting off on a good foot.
The discs themselves are called PVDs, which should seem a little familiar. It stands for Personal Video Disc. That's right, we're talking CDs again. Although these are a little smaller at 85mm for the black and white discs, and 107mm for the color PVDs, versus a standard CD's 120mm diameter. That way you can't pop one of the color discs into a black and white player, or pop a regular CD into any of them. Although the black and white disc will play fine in a color model and up. There's also a couple special discs made for the XP model only as well.
They also have a unique system for getting the video on the disc. The video is stored in one of the audio channels, meaning that it only has mono sound. And that brings us on to different models in my collection.
We'll start with the original 2003 black and white version. It looks like a CD player with a little monochrome screen placed where the track list would be. It even has skip buttons, as well as a play, pause, and stop button. The stop button functions as an off button, and the play, pause button turns the system on. Though there is a light accessory that I didn't buy but had back in the day, so I know it has a glare problem. The system has a headphone jack and a slider for volume, as well as a second slider for the contrast. A necessity for the tiny pixelated black and white screen. I have a total of 7 of the black and white discs, and all of them are Nickelodeon cartoons. Which isn't surprising, as there was a lot of Nickelodeon cartoons in the original library of black and white titles. I have 4 Fairly Odd Parents discs, 2 SpongeBob discs, and 1 Jimmy Neutron disc. They all contain 1 episode of the TV show, usually split into 2 segments. The disc only holds roughly 25 minutes of video, and since there are no commercials to fill that space like on television, the extra space on the disc is usually filled with advertisements for other disc packs and cartoons at the end. In pursuit of portability, a lot of features have been left out.
The videos play at about 15 frames a second or so. Well, who needs frame rates anyways?
That being said, I was surprised when I revisited this thing that I could actually tell what was going on when I watched it. The screen is surprisingly sharp for what it is.
Not really much more to say about this model, other than its lack of skip protection, which means it's pretty much useless on a bumpy drive. Though, I think that's a problem with all the models.
A year later, they released a revamped model that had color, a slightly bigger screen, that was backlit, and a different design, but kept it pretty much the same. The model I have is actually a Color FX model. The only difference between this model and a standard color model is the translucent colored shell. The Color FX model was released a couple years later in 2006, and was the last model to be released. The buttons on this model are moved around a bit and are more pronounced, as the whole screen pops up in this model when you put the disc in as opposed to being part of the backplate in the original. There's still a volume and contrast slider and a headphone jack, as well as a new addition, a 4.5 volt power port. On the black and white discs, just as in the original player, it brings you to a menu first, similar to a track list on a CD. However, color discs start up automatically when you press play. Black and white discs are also cropped a little bit to fit the screen better. I have 3 color discs, and one of them you'll notice looks a little different, as it's a disc that was made for the next model we'll end up talking about and has some interactive features on it, though it will play on a regular color model with little issue. It just won't have access to the interactive features, as this model lacks the buttons required to do so. The disc is Superstars of the NBA, and the other 2 colored discs that I have are both episodes of The Amanda Show. The screen is still pretty crappy, and there's a whole lot of ghosting on the system, but there was a fair amount on the original too. I think the color actually makes the faults stick out more, and its low quality is just that much more apparent. I will say that during slower and smoother shots with less going on, that it does work pretty fluidly, even if it's not that often. And the screen is pretty good quality for the time.
Not much more to see here, so again, we'll move on. But before we do, I can't help but mention the Video Now Junior,
which came out in 2004 at the same time as the Color launched and was branded by Play School. It was aimed at a much younger age group and had a lot of preschool shows for it. The discs themselves for the system were flexible to withstand use from small children. The buttons were much bigger and durable, as well as it having 2 tabs to open the lid, more than likely to stop children from touching the laser inside.
And with that, we come to the last model, and the last model that I have.
The Video Now XP. I wonder what that design is trying to emulate.
That makes sense though, as a big advertised feature for the device was that it could play games. Kind of. There were only 3 games made for it, and they were all games in the same way that Dragon's Lair is. Nice.
They're more like interactive cartoons, where you hit buttons in time when they pop up on screen.
I only have one of these discs.
There was a What's New Scooby-Doo game, a Batman game, and a Teen Titans game.
I only picked up the Teen Titans one to test out, so I can't speak to the quality of the other 2 games. But if it's anything like this one, then there is no quality.
I can't tell if the animation used in the game are new and made specifically for this, or if it's just reused from points in the show, since it's been a long time since I watched the series.
What I can say is that this game is just plain terrible.
The animation is good, but the screen really doesn't do it any favors. And the announcers that set up the vague plot of the tournament are seriously just plain annoying and really break up the fights, even more than the button prompts. When you miss a button prompt,
which, believe me, will happen a lot,
nothing changes in the animation. It plays out the same either way. You do gain points when you hit the prompts correctly, and getting them wrong affects the team's placements in the tournaments after the fight. But it's a little late at that point and comes off as half-assed. I honestly had the hardest time getting it to respond to my input and working out the timing. The disc has 5 stages on it and only has the game with no bonus clips.
Seriously, these button prompts are hell.
The buttons also give you access to special features on some of the discs that were released around this time, such as the NBA disc that I have. When this disc boots up, it tells you to hit the skip button unless you have the XP system. In that case, you can hit the B button to access the bonus features. In a lot of these discs, it's a basic and short trivia game, related to the disc's content itself. In this case, you're given two options: to watch the show, or B for some bonus clips. The menus here are pretty slow, and I was having a problem with it crashing in the middle of them. The system has a fold-out screen that's the biggest on any of these models at 3 inches, and is also backlit like the color models. The standard skip, play, pause, and stop are all located near the bottom and stick out where the clamshell is folded. When open, the buttons are revealed. There's an A button and a B button stacked on top of each other vertically rather than horizontally. It's sort of D-pad with arrows in 4 directions. The sliders, power port, and headphone jack are all back in similar positions, and there's a new flick switch that locks the use of all the buttons, as well as one that opens up the system similar to the color FX to put in a disc. The button placement on top of the lid makes them feel even more spongy than they already are, and make button presses feel unresponsive, and gives them a fragile feeling.
It's no wonder why there were only 3 game PVDs made for the thing.
Even though it wasn't the last one put on the market, seeing as how it was released in 2005, and the Color FX model came out in 2006. Though that model, as stated earlier, is really just a reskin of the Color model.
This one feels like a last breath for the systems and an attempt to stay relevant. Oh, and XP stands for Extra Play. One more quick thing to talk about before we move on is this.
This is the Media Wizard, and it allows you to make your own PVDs. I used it to make the intro for this video for authenticity. It comes with 4 blank discs, 4 jewel cases, the software, and an adapter to make the discs fit into a standard CD tray. These are the slightly bigger discs, so you can only play them on the color model and up. There's a good selection of features here, and it's pretty easy to use. You can add videos and order them on the disc, though since you only have so much space on these discs, some files need to be broken up over multiple discs. You can also make discs with pictures and music. You'll have to choose whether you're making a video disc or one with pictures and music first.
That's a bit crazy, right? I mean, the thing's already a glorified CD player. And if you just go ahead and put music on it, you defeat the purpose of the entire device.
You can modify certain models of these systems so that you can put regular CDRs in them with your own compressed videos, which gives you more space at about 42 minutes of video, though this takes some careful snipping and gluing of the system itself. Now, I used one of the blank discs I have to make the intro and get footage of the software in use. I'm going to save one disc and leave it blank, and take another one to save and put some of my favorite clips or something on it down the road to get a little more use out of the system. That leaves me with one extra blank disc. What am I going to do with that one?
Well, I think I'm going to leave that up to you. Let me know in the comments which of my videos you think I should put on a DVD. And then one of these days, I'll tally up all the votes, and I'll do it. This will be down the line, so there'll be a lot more to choose from. And if the video is short enough, I'll even put the runner-up on DVD as well. So, it might be a while before I get to it, and I don't know what I'll ever do with that PVD. But I can promise you I will do it based on your votes, so let me know. So what's my personal connection to this piece of tech? Well, my mother got one for my brother and I when we were both kids. She got one of the black and white ones. In fact, she got the whole shebang.
With headphones, the light, and chargers, as well as several discs. She also got us a color model later on.
We didn't really use them that often, and quickly forgot about them. I don't remember whatever happened to our old ones, but needless to say, they're long gone. I do have fond memories of watching cartoons one Christmas at my grandmother's when I was feeling sad laying in bed trying to stay quiet. It was a nice little distraction on that particular night, but I rarely used them otherwise. recommendations with tech stuff like this, to me, generally come down to current usefulness and collectability. In terms of current usefulness, well, there's way better ways to watch a video on the go now, including the thing in your pocket that you carry with you everywhere. And collectability is also a dead end, as the players aren't hard to find nowadays. I mean, they sold 1.2 million players and 4 million discs in 2003. So they got around, which explains how I got one. And they're not expensive either. Unless you're buying a whole collection. It's a neat piece of portable media history, and about as 2000s tween as you can get. Some models more than others. If I had to pick a favorite, I'd probably go with the original model. It's the sturdiest of all of them, and I think that the black and white helps kind of hide some of the video defects. Although the color model does have the obvious advantage of, color. And it's not quite as flimsy as the XP model, which I think is the worst of all the models, at least in my collection. I'll never use it. It's kind of nice to have it in my collection again. Thank you for tuning in and listening to me go on about a weird CD video player I used to have. Hopefully you learned a little something about the crazy portable media landscape of the early aughties. You know the deal, subscribe, like, well, all that shit down there. And I'll leave you with a little bit more of that video now-ized footage. Have a great day, everyone. Well, hello, we're sure glad you're here tonight. Yeah, I can't sing. But you know what's even harder than singing? Singing and playing an instrument. Like, let's say the drums. Well, let's make that more interesting. Let's say you're singing while playing the drums, while up front, standing at the front of the stage. I know one band like that. So today, let's do something a little different and talk about a not so well known band from the 90s known as Jellyfish.
Jellyfish was an American power pop band originally consisting of Andy Strummer on drums and vocals, Roger Joseph Manning Jr. on keyboards and vocals, Jason Faulkner on guitar, and Chris Manning on bass.
The band's story begins with Jason Faulkner leaving the band he was in at the time, the 3 O'Clocks, and placing an ad looking to start up a project in LA.
Roger Manning Jr., who was attending the University of Southern California at the time, saw the ad and was drawn to the listing by the fact that Jason was the only one who had mentioned the band XTC in their post.
They got in contact, although nothing came from their initial meeting.
Roger Manning Jr. moved to the Bay Area in 1988 to join the San Francisco band Beatnik Beach and replace their keyboardist.
The drummer and a singer for the band at the time was Andy Strummer. Roger and Andy had actually briefly known each other during high school, and they quickly formed a songwriting pair.
Writing a good amount of material for Beatnik Beach's second album. This work was turned down by the band's other singer and bassist, Chris Kettner.
This led Andy and Roger to leave the band and pursue their own project.
This is when Jason Faulkner was brought back into the picture after being contacted by Roger. This is the crew that created the band's debut album. Chris Manning is Roger's brother and was asked to come on board as the bass player for live performances after the album was completed. Thus, Jellyfish was born. The band's influences include XTC, the Beatles, and the Beach Boys.
Their style is 70s rock and 60s power pop, with an emphasis on production that was even more prevalent in their second album. They have great vocal harmony together, and they pair that with lyrics that cover a wide array of topics that usually aren't discussed like this in pop music. For instance, an older couple with a failing marriage.
Some noticeable accomplishments include their song Baby's Coming Back, peaking at 62 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart, and the video for King is Half Undressed being nominated for Best Art Direction in the 1991 MTV Music Video Awards. The band's debut album was Belly Button, released in 1991 under the label Charisma. After completing the album and touring, Chris Manning would leave the band after becoming sick of touring. Tim Smith was contacted to replace Chris as Andy and Roger worked on gathering material for the next album. Jason Faulkner had written some material for the band and wanted to use it for their next album, but was repeatedly turned down. This tension with Andy saw Jason leave to pursue his own musical interests. He was replaced for touring purposes by Eric Dover, and studio musicians John Bryan and Lyle Workman were brought on to perform some of the compositions during recording. This led to the band's second and final studio album, Spilt Milk, in 1993 under Charisma as well.
The album has much more production value than the first, and since Andy and Roger were the driving creative force behind both albums, the style is retained, with a noticeable uptick in overdubbing and complex arrangements.
The perfectionism in the studio would eventually begin to strain on even Andy and Roger, leading to this being the last studio album that the band finished. There are also a couple of live performances that were recorded long after the band's breakup. They were Live at Bogart's and Radio Jellyfish, live radio broadcast 1993, released in 2012 and 2013 respectively. They were both released by Omnivore Records. There is a compilation album called Best that was released in 2006 by Virgin. It contains songs from Belly Button, Spilt Milk, as well as the song Ignorance is Bliss, which is the song the band made for a Nintendo compilation album by the name of Nintendo, White Knuckle Scoring. Lastly, there's Fan Club, which is a compilation of demos and live performances that was released in 2002 by Not Lame Records. The band officially broke up in 1994. The last thing the two worked on was a cover of the Harry Nilsson song, Think About Your Troubles, under a personal request of the musician who was a fan of the band. Unfortunately, he died before its release.
At the time, Andy and Roger were working on material for the band's third studio album. However, that didn't last long.
Andy was notoriously difficult to work and get along with. The musical styles of the two also began to drift apart. At one point, Andy was working on a country ballad for the next album that he showed to Roger, who then left in tears. The last time the two spoke was over the phone, where Roger told Andy, "I think this is over," and Andy replied, "I've been thinking the same thing."
Roger still keeps in contact with all the other members of the band, and even though he hasn't spoken to Andy in over 30 years, there's no bad blood between them, despite the way the band broke up. Jason Faulkner actually ran into Andy by surprise in 2004 while he was recording in Ocean Ways studio. Andy said that he had a premonition, and then he knew he was going to see Jason. And then he apologized to Jason for not giving him a chance all those years ago. They exchanged phone numbers, although they never got in contact after that.
Roger Joseph Manning Jr. went on to work with Eric Dover in the band Imperial Drag that released a self-titled album in 1996. Imperial Drag soon broke up though in 1997, and Roger moved on to his solo career, releasing his first studio album in 2006. The album was titled Solid State Warrior in Japan and The Land of Pure Imagination in America. The track list and name were changed for its US release of the same year. He released Robo Sapiens as Malibu in 2007, followed by Catnip Dynamite in 2008 and Glamping in 2018. He was also a key member of the electronic cover band The Moog Cookbook, as well as the synth pop band TV Eyes with Jason Faulkner. After departing from the band, Jason Faulkner found himself briefly in the band The Greys before the band broke up after their first album, Rochambeau, in 1994. He then got to work on a solo project and released Jason Faulkner Presents Author Unknown in 1996. He released several studio albums to follow, including Can You Still Feel in 1999, I'm Okay, You're Okay in 2007, All Quiet on the Noise Floor in 2009. There was also an instrumental Beatles cover album in 2001 that received a part 2 in 2008. He went on to work as a studio musician for several notable artists. Chris Manning is a producer and engineer now, with a decent list of credits to his name as well.
Finally, Andy Strummer laid low for a while. I'm willing to bet that you're probably familiar with at least some of his work, and this might be the one part of the video that really surprises you.
Of course, he worked like many of the former members as a studio musician, and did a lot of work with talented artists, and has appeared in a number of artists' side projects here and there. But he was more withdrawn after the band's breakup, taking a more out-of-the-spotlight role in his work.
He's responsible for some cartoon theme songs, though, which you might be familiar with. He wrote the theme song for the Teen Titans. He wrote and composed the theme song for Ben 10 and Batman the Brave and the Bold, as well as performing the theme song for Transformers Animated. That's impressive! Those are 3 awesome theme songs that get you pumped up for each respective show. And now, you know the man behind them.
Puffy Amiyumi performed the theme that Andy wrote for the Teen Titans. But there's more of a connection here than that. Andy Strummer is actually known as the godfather of Puffy Amiyumi, for giving them their name when the duo first came together. He produced a couple of their studio albums, including their first. He worked with them on the theme for the Cartoon Network cartoon, and was a consulting producer for the show. Another little piece of trivia is that song from Nintendo White Knuckle Scorin' that the band worked on, titled Ignorance is Bliss, had a flash animation music video someone made around 2006. It wasn't necessarily viral, but it did get around a bit, and I thought I'd mention it. There's a link for it in the description.
My connection to this band actually starts here on YouTube.
Back when Zero Punctuation didn't have a theme song, one of the episodes ended with Ignorance is Bliss. Actually, that's how I found one of my favorite bands of all time, too. Butterfingers.
Thanks, Yahtzee! Not only did you introduce me to some games that I love, but also some great music. Back in the day, I couldn't find any of their music for download, so Best was actually the first thing I ever torrented. And I waited all night for it to download because no one was seeding it. When I finally got it, it actually turned out that the last 2 tracks were warped beyond recognition and unsalvageable. Which is funny because one of those tracks was Ignorance is Bliss, the song that actually led me to them in the first place. And I didn't end up getting that song until years later for some reason. I remember sitting in the dark, bathed in just the light from the monitor, and getting lost in the music. I think a big part of the reason I was so drawn to their music in the first place was how hard to find it was and how almost lost it was. I think that was very alluring to me. Although, learning about how they perform live later blew my mind. In the end, however, it's the music itself that kept me coming back. This is definitely a band that I love. I mean, I did a whole video talking about them, even though I've never covered anything like this before. The production value is top-notch, and some of the hooks are captivating. I love the depth of the lyrics and the songwriting on display in the band. It's some great relaxing music for a nice summer day, and even some of the ballads are pretty bright. Some of my favorites would include Hello, a live song which they never recorded, which had different words every time they performed it. You can find a video on YouTube of them performing it live. As well as New Mistake, and of course, Ignorance is Bliss. Would I recommend them? Well, that depends on your taste. I would definitely recommend the Flash video for Ignorance is Bliss. Regardless of your musical taste, you might like the video. As for the band and their music, well, if you like classic pop rock, or are looking for music with a little more lyrical variety, then I definitely recommend them. If you're a hipster looking for something really obscure, or just want to chill out with some fun vocal harmonies, I would say give at least a song or two a listen. But if they're really just not your style, I totally understand. Let me know in the comments if you enjoy the band. Thank you for tuning in and listening to me talk about a forgotten 90s band that I love. You know the usual deal, subscribe, all that shit. And hopefully you learned something today about a superb, overproduced pop band. And hopefully you were entertained as well. And as always, have a great day, everybody. Finally, something to talk about that's well within my budget. None. Alright, let's talk about the Deadly Tower of Monsters. Now, we're no strangers to it on the channel, as we've streamed it a couple of times. It was released January 19th, 2016 worldwide. So, if it's not that old, how can it be forgotten? Well, even though it's one of the more well-known things we've covered on the channel, and it's certainly the most recent thing we've covered on the channel, it's still not that well-known. It was developed by Ace-T and published by Atlas USA. It was released for PC and PS4. I'll be playing the PC version. The game is a top-down twin-stick shooter with an old-school science fiction B-movie theme. You move with the left stick, or WSAD on PC. The right stick aims your character, and the press toggle the mini-map. This is handled by the mouse and the N key respectively on PC. You jump with the A button or spacebar, and roll/parry with B or the left shift. You fire your main weapon with the right stick, or by right-clicking the mouse. You can also attack with your melee weapon by using the X button or left click. On a controller, up on the D-pad swaps your ranged weapon, and down swaps your melee weapon. And left and right toggle your powers. On a PC, these are handled by E and Q, and the powers are mapped to 1 through 4.
These powers are unlocked over the course of scaling the tower, and there are 4 in total. Each character has powers unique to them that you'll use to get around obstacles to progress or find collectibles around the tower. You use the special powers with Y on a controller or Z on a PC. As you climb the tower, occasionally you'll have enemies approaching from below. To handle these guys, you have a lead shooting mechanic. Simply approach the lead where the prompt comes up and hit the right bumper on a controller, or F on a PC to activate. This is an important mechanic as you can't aim down because of the verticality of the game. It's not too hard to fall off the tower, and seeing as how you're trying to get to the top, you would think this could be quite annoying, but it's actually incorporated in gameplay and helps encourage exploration. At some point while climbing the tower, you will unlock the air teleport ability. This is used in mid-air when falling to instantly teleport you back to the ledge you jumped off. On the controller it's mapped to the left bumper, and on PC it's C. You can help slow your fall by using the jetpack as you get close to landing, but be careful as you only have so much jet fuel, it burns quick. If you fall off the tower to a lower level and land before you can use the air teleport, you can open up the teleport console that handles fast traveling to parts of the tower you've been to using the select button, or M on the PC. Along the journey, you'll find hidden targets that you can shoot to get points to spend on your character. You'll also find a selection of different colored cogs that you can use to upgrade your weapons in these ones. You can change your equipped melee weapon and ranged weapon with these ones. Also, I should mention that there's a survival mode where you survive 18 waves of increasingly difficult enemies in cramped space. I hate this survival mode. I have one achievement left on Steam, and it's to beat all 18 waves of it. I spent an entire day trying, and several times I got to the final wave, only to have my ass get sent right back to the beginning. And it's just such a grind to get to that final wave. It's just ridiculous. Just fuck this survival mode. Oh, and also there's a co-op mode, which must be a newer feature, as it says that the game wasn't designed for it, and I don't remember seeing it there before. But I'm definitely gonna have to check it out now. On the opening and start menu, they introduce you to the voice of Dan Smith, the in-universe director of the movie that is the game. He provides meta commentary as you play the game, under the guise of recording a commentary track of the movie as it's being released on DVD. The main character of the movie is Dick Starsby, played by in-universe actor Jonathan Digby. Along the way, you'll meet his trusted robot companion, Robot, as well as Scarlet Nova, whose father is actually the tyrannical emperor who rules the planet and the tower. The game starts with him shooting down Dick's rocket, leaving him stranded on the plane. With that, Dick sets off to climb the tower, take down the evil tyrant, and repair his ship. Scarlet Nova is actually the rebellious daughter of the evil emperor. I don't want to spoil too much of the story, so I'll give you a brief rundown of some of the plot points. From the catwalk your ship crash landed on, you'll quickly find yourself in an ape village. After fighting your way through, Dick gets grabbed by a massive gorilla. At this point, you play as Scarlet, who shows up to save the day. Now you can change characters at certain points in these pods. You climb for a bit, briefly return to the ape village, and fight a T-Rex. Then we get back to climbing the tower, unlocking Robot along the way, and encountering some great boss fights. Eventually, we reach the top of the tower, and charge up a rocket using the power just unlocked for Robot. We reach a space station and a series of rocks floating in space, we traverse, continuing to fight our way onwards and upwards. Now, if you want to check this game out, here is where I would suggest you skip forward a couple minutes. Spoilers ahead. This is the point where the game goes full balls to the wall insane. It's super meta. The cast is approached by aliens called Gregorians, asking for their help, and they're given a new power, a set of scissors that are used to instantly take some enemies down that are clearly held up by strings. At the very top of this segment is the final battle. During this boss fight, at one point, it all looks hopeless. At this moment, everything pauses, and the Gregorians explain everything. They explain that this is a movie set, and suddenly you can even walk off set and give Dan Smith a good smack. The boss fight then continues, and this cycle repeats a few times. Finally, you're given one last chance to smack the director, and you're given the final cutscene. The director is confronted by the actors, who are not actors, but rather the characters from the story, who convince him to rewrite the ending of the movie, and voila! Roll credits. So that ending is kind of insane and totally caught me off guard the first time. Some things online list the movies the game is emulating as 1950s B-movies, others as it being 1970s B-movies. Honestly, I think that the game parodies and emulates things from both eras of B-movies, and there are plenty of references to B-movies as a whole. Another bit of trivia is that sometimes when booting up the menu, the poster for the background will be different. Dan Smith will comment on it. It's some pretty funny back and forth with him and the guy working the sound. As far as my personal connection to the game goes, it was on my Steam wishlist, and I finally bought it a couple years back. It's just that simple. I mean, I do love sci-fi and old B-movies. You know what I mean. That's what I mean. Also, as I said before, I did stream it a good couple times on the channel. It was actually the first game I beat well in advance of making the video. I love the cheesy old movie aesthetic that they go with, and some of the jokes are just great. Also, I think the director's commentary over the levels really seals the deal for me, as well as jumping off the tower at any point and teleporting back to where you jumped off. It's really great for exploration, and I think it helps with a lot of the boss battles as well. The game can get a little stale and repetitive at times, but it's very short, so it doesn't really overstay its welcome. I think the review scores are pretty accurate, except they're a little high here and there. I think it's a great game, don't get me wrong, but it does have flaws. I think sometimes it leans a little too hard on the ha-ha old B-movies joke, and I think the story really begins to pick up for me closer to the end, when everything just goes balls to the wall insane. I absolutely love the twist of a mindfuck that is the end of this game. Thank you for tuning in today and listening to me talk about a game from my Steam list that I haven't played in a while. That's, if not forgotten, at least not very well known. Hopefully you learned a little something and were entertained. And as always, have a great one, everybody.
Such a shame. I thought from day one this guy's got leading man written all over his face.
Also, magic marker penises, but I put those there, so...
Dick. Malfunction. Dick. Malfunction.
Excuse
Gregorians will pay dearly for this, my
No. It works
now,
just
what's
fine,
a
I'll have
space
you know.
adventure film without a trusty robot sidekick, huh? Am I right?
Yeah, robot, maybe not tell everybody,
We had Dick and Scarlet.
That counted.
Well, it was a death trap. Just plain and simple.
It was a death trap. It killed several of our actors on set. It was a trap that killed them. It was a
basketball in
trap.
college or something.
Oh, I didn't have to do nothing.
Oh no! You know? I am trapped!
What?
Master Dick. Master Dick.
I thought you said it was malfunctioning earlier.
Let me guess. Another of your fake death scenes?
No,
why?
no,
No,
Jonathan, that was a real death
not
scene.
exactly. That was
I
an
thought we
accident.
burned that. I thought we burned
like
that
that
tape.
one hurt,
Honestly,
too.
I thought we got rid of that. You might want to burn that now. Also, just to let you know, since you've seen it, you're now obligated to never tell anybody that you have seen it, or you're gonna end up like that tape. Wait. What? My name is Shewowa. I find things forgotten to time and drag them back out into the spotlight. I was recently thrown into a black hole of mostly forgotten media by an old show from Sci-Fi. So today, if there's anyone out there that can hear me, I'm just looking for a way home. And today we're talking about Farscape. Farscape is an Australian-American science fiction show that aired from 1999 to 2003. It was originally produced for Australia's 9 network and also aired on Sci-Fi everywhere else. It was created by Rockney S. Soban and produced by Hallmark Entertainment and the Jim Henson Company, who were responsible for makeup and prosthetics, as well as 2 animatronic characters. It ran for 4 seasons and had a total of 88 episodes. The cast of characters grows and changes over the course of the seasons, but some important players are as follows. There's our main protagonist, John Crichton, played by Ben Browder. Aaron's son, played by Claudia Black, who is an outcast officer from the militaristic order. Da Argo, played by Anthony Simcoe, who is an ill-tempered warrior who is falsely imprisoned. Tozan, played by Virginia Hay, who is a tall, blue-skinned female plant species that was once a priestess of the religious order. Moya, who is the living ship that the crew inhabits. She communicates through the character Pilot, who is an enormous living entity symbiotically fused to her, who is voiced by Lanny Tappan, as well as an entire crew of people, being that he's one of the puppet characters. Dominar Rigel 14 is the other puppet character, who is voiced by Jonathan Harvey, and is a small creature that was once the ruler of an empire before being deposed by treachery. Then there's Gianna, played by Gigi Edgley, who is a rebellious, foolish gray-skinned species and is a bit of a con artist. Stark, played by Paul Goodard, who was introduced at the end of Season 1 and mentally unnerved, getting on many of the crew's nerves as well. Bailar Kais, played by Lanny Tapu, was a member of the militaristic order that Aaron is a member of, and the initial antagonist of the series. Finally, Scorpius is played by Wayne Pygram, who is commander of the same militaristic order and is obsessed with extracting the secret of wormhole technology. The basic plot structure is a little more varied, with episodes having plot threads that continue for future episodes and seasons. There are flashback episodes that give more backstory to the characters, but overall plots are overarching as events progress in the series. Today, I'm going to be going over the first episode, just to give you a little taste. And if you're interested in seeing more, there's a whole lot more of this show out there to sink your teeth into. Premiere. The episode opens with John and his friend getting ready for a shuttle launch to test their scientific theory. John is actually going to be piloting a craft of his own design called Farscape 1 from the space shuttle Medusa. He gets some advice from his father, who is an astronaut back in the day before boarding. Things go smoothly at first, but before long things start going haywire. During the chaos, Farscape 1 is flung into immense speeds directly at some kind of wormhole. On the other side, John finds that he can't reach the launch site on comm and finds himself in the middle of a battle. The ship is pulled into a larger mothership and disabled by a Roomba-like robot. It shoots some kind of light into John's eyes. He is led to the bridge. There we meet Dargo and Pauzotazan. After being given some kind of serum from one of the little robots who understand their language, John learns that the only reason they brought him on board is because he appeared out of nowhere and they need the tech that brought him here to help them escape. After they manage to unlock control of the ship, they escape. We meet our villains for the series, the Peacekeepers, who are going over the escape of the prison ship to capture John. We discover that when he appeared during the battle,
and kill the villain's brother. The crew of escaped prisoners finally get a chance to introduce themselves to each other, and we get a little backstory for our characters. John awakens naked in the cell, and while scrambling to get dressed, he asks Dominar Rigel 14 why he's in the cell and what's going on. Dominar points to a captured peacekeeper who is also in the cell with him. She pulls off her helmet and proceeds to kick John's ass as an introduction. After discovering John's face and confusing him with one of her own, the commander orders his forces to pursue the escaped prison ship. The crew is discussing their ship's condition and the plan of action. They ask Aaron's son, the captured peacekeeper, if the area they're going into has any peacekeeper presence, but she refuses to answer. And we learn that Dominar farts helium when he's angry or nervous. After dinner, John deduces that it was a wormhole that brought him here, and he reveals that he snuck a fork from dinner, allowing Aaron and himself to escape the cell. This happens.
Compassion? What is compassion?
Compassion? You're kidding, right? It's a feeling that you have when you see someone else's pain, and instead of taking advantage of their weakness, you help them.
Oh, I know this feeling.
Yeah, well, it is a fairly common human feeling.
I hate it.
You know what? I'm on the wrong team here. I'm just gonna stay.
And the two of them escape to a nearby planet. The peacekeepers send forces to the planet after being tipped off by Aaron. They show up just as Cod Argo confronts John and Aaron and attempt to take John for study. Aaron defends him with this.
Only that I have spent time with him, sir, and I believe him when he says that what happened to your brother was an accident. I don't believe that he is brave enough or intelligent enough to attack one of our prowlers intentionally.
Although the three are captured, the rest of the crew is on the ship, making repairs having escaped. Through some quick thinking, John manages to overpower the guards, and after a little tension, manages to get everyone to go back together to the Leviathan. Upon boarding, the crew discovers that a peacekeeper fighting ship is tailing them. John does some math to work out a maneuver to get them quickly out of range, although the only person who is familiar with the ship's manual control is Aaron. They manage to barely escape, and the crew finally gets some downtime. We get some character interactions, and learn how distrusting everyone on the ship is, before the episode draws to a close with John recording a message for his father. The show was nearly canceled halfway through its first season, when they were forced out of the location that they were filming on to make room for Star Wars Episode 2. Luckily, they found a local place that they could continue shooting at, and the show continued. The nickname Pip for Chiana was actually a nickname that Ben Broder used for Gigi Edgley long before shooting. Also, I'm going to link an article in the description about where the actors are now, because I just found it really interesting. Another thing to mention is that James Gunn revealed in an Instagram post that Farscape was one of his all-time favorite sci-fi shows. This led Ben Browder to appear as Sovereign Admiral in a cameo in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. The series was planned to have 5 seasons. However, Vivendi Universal, who owned Sci-Fi at the time, pulled the funding, leading it to end early and on a cliffhanger. People wouldn't have to wait long enough for a resolution to the cliffhanger. In 2004, a 2-episode miniseries called Farscape: The Peacekeeper Wars was aired, giving the series a proper finish and wrapping up some loose ends. It would have been nice to get a final season of the show, although the cliffhanger did get resolved and fans didn't have to wait long for that. As of 2019, all of the seasons of Farscape and The Peacekeeper Wars are available on Amazon Prime, which means that they have 2 cult classic shows that I actually get to talk about here on the channel. And there's also a comic book for Farscape if you wanted to check that out. I discovered this show actually when I was a kid when it first aired on Sci-Fi. I used to watch it with my dad every week. It was one of the first shows we watched that we bonded over. After its cancellation, we found other shows to watch and bond over, but Farscape was always one of my favorites. And rewatching it for this review was a real treat. It's no surprise that, like my dad, I absolutely fell in love with this show. The effects are top-notch, and you gotta love some good old-fashioned practical effects. And even though the computer graphics are a little dated, that just adds to the charm for me. The characters are great, and I love their interactions with each other, although there's plenty of action here as well as character development. Might actually be a little slow to people who are more accustomed to modern TV shows, but it's great for binging nonetheless because of the overarching plots and how plot threads from a season ago will pop back up. I would recommend this show to any sci-fi fan, and unless you're completely turned off by the concept of anything science fiction, then there's probably something in the show to hook you. The characters' struggles will grow on you just like they grow as characters. And it's worth it for the practical effects alone, honestly. It's not hard to find, and it's definitely worth a watch if you can. It received praise from critics and audiences all across the board. You'll find no argument here. Thank you for tuning in and listening to me reminisce about a sci-fi cult character. It's gone, but not forgotten. You know the usual deal. Subscribe, all that shit. Hopefully you enjoyed the video, and you learned a little something about a sci-fi cult classic. Great practical effects. And as always, have a great one, everybody. Hello? I'm not getting out of here, am I? Oh, fuck.